Thanks, everyone, for attending today. We want to thank you for spending the next 45 minutes or so with us. As you're going to see on our training here with the Sentinel AC 2-wire decoder system. We're really excited about this product, and I think after this training session, you'll feel the same. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through these topics over here on the left. I'm going to start off going through a product comparison, primarily taking a look at the Sentinel AC 2-wire versus the Sentinel DC 2-wire, which has been the predominant 2-wire product that we've been selling for the last several years, and let you see what things are similar and what are different between the two products. I'm going to go over the decoders in detail, the output boards. We're going to spend a few minutes looking at setup, both from the faceplate of the controller and also via the software. The last part that I'll cover here will be on support materials, which Peter Lackner's done a great job putting together the support materials, website, things like that you'll see here as far as support materials for all of the new Sentinel line and the current Sentinel line. Let's take a look at the comparison between the two products. I know a number of you looking at the list of attendees that are on the webcast today have purchased and installed or had contractors install the Toro DC 2-wire. So with the Toro AC, let's just go down bullet by bullet and take a look at the comparison. Both do 204 valves, so that does not change. Obviously, the AC is going to operate standard AC valves. The DC, as you know, need the latching solenoids on them. With our valves, we've been selling those solenoids on those valves at no extra charge. If you had a project where you were doing a conversion, or if it was a Reinbird or a Hunter valve specified, they'd actually have to buy those solenoids separate and replace them on there. So it's still the same number, 204. But if you go to the next bullet point down and you look at the AC, since we're putting out 24 volts of continuous power out onto the solenoid now instead of just doing the pulse to latch, the solenoids, as far as simultaneous, are 8 compared to 16 on the DC system. That also affects the wire run. If you look at the wire run on the AC, you can go 5,000 feet on a 14 2-gauge wire right there. You can also loop it. And if you loop it, it takes you out to 10,000 feet. And as you can see on the DC, we go out farther on a single run, 15,000 feet in any direction from the controller. It is not looped. And I know of certain projects that contractors went out there and looped it and caused problems on the DC. That does not cause the problem on the AC system. The grounding on the AC system is a little tighter than the DC. We're recommending every 600 feet on the DC system. The recommendation is for grounding to be no farther than 500 feet from any decoder. Therefore, if you had a decoder in the middle, you could have grounding 500 feet to the left and 500 feet to the right. That would give you about 1,000 feet of separation between the two grounding points. So there's a difference there. When you look at the boards, which I'll have photographs of in a moment, you'll see on the new AC 2-wire that there are 2 AC 2-wire paths that come out of the boards. On the DC, when you purchase that and you get the controller from the factory, it's going to come with 1 daughter board. There's actually 4 2-wire paths on the first daughter board. If needed, you could order a second daughter board on the DC and go up to 8 2-wire paths originating from the controller right there. One of the main differences that you'll find is that on the Toro AC that we have a separate master valve board. It's somewhat of a power board that I'll get into in just a moment. And you can run an AC master valve or a pump start off that board. Doing it on the DC version of the Sentinel 2-wire, we have to run that through a decoder, and we have to do a DC latching solenoid on a master valve or get a DC latching relay for a pump start. And I know in certain situations that's caused a little bit of problem. We have it now where it's all AC. When you look at the voltage on the line, it's very similar. We've got 34 volts of AC power on the on the new AC 2-wire. On the DC, the voltage is running between 38 to 40 volts of AC power right there. The milliamp readings, for anyone that's ever gone out and used a milliamp clamp for troubleshooting purposes, and you clamp on the wire, you notice what it is. On the DC, it runs between 0.7 and 8. We typically call it 0.78 milliamps per single station decoder on the DC. Slightly less on the new AC. It runs about 0.5 milliamps per single station decoder right there. When we look at the cabinets that come as far as options to get the new AC2 wire, they're going to be very similar to the DC, but I want to point out one major change to that, and that's the controller on the left. The powder-coated wall mount is the same as the custom command. If you've purchased a wall mount with the DC, it was coming in the original PDC box, which was a bit wider, the powder-coated. Because the power board and the two-wire board are not as large as what is in the DC version, it fits very well inside of the WS1 cabinet you see right there on the left. And so it's a more compact offering. It's better for retrofits in those situations right there. But we also have this available for those projects where you need to have the large stainless wall mounts, the plastic pedestal, and also in the stainless pedestal. That's all available with the Sentinel 2 wire. So depending on what your customer needs, the environment that it's going to be in, we've got options for just about any situation right there. When we look at the actual solenoids per station, this is very important to take note of right here. You can go up to 2 standard solenoids per station. So very much like what it is on the DC, you can connect 2 solenoids onto a single station decoder. But if you look at the next bullet point right there, there is a maximum of 4 total solenoids per decoder. When you look at this, the decoders come in 1, 2, and 4 station options. If I had a 1-station decoder, I could hook 2 solenoids to it. If I had a 2-station solenoid decoder, I could hook 4 solenoids to it. But if I had a 4-station decoder, I'm doing 1 solenoid per station right there. So the important thing to remember is the maximum of 4 solenoids per decoder. I know it's rare when you're doubling up solenoids on a decoder, but just remember that there's a maximum of that many solenoids per decoder. Let's take a look at the actual decoders themselves, and they're pretty neat in what they do and how they operate. They come 1, 2, and 4 station, as I just mentioned. They operate almost all 24-volt AC solenoids, but you see what I've got on this screen here, no spike guard solenoids. If you get spike guard, if you get it on a P220, you order it. If it's on a golf head, it's not going to operate on the Sentinel AC2 wire, so you need to make a note of that. It needs to be a conventional 24 VAC solenoid for it to operate properly. There are LEDs on the actual decoder itself, which indicate communication from the controller and connectivity to the solenoid itself, so you have a visual indicator out there in the field now. One of the best things about this decoder and how we're packaging it is that it includes all of the DBY6 connectors with the decoder itself. So when you sell this, the contractor that's installing is going to have the proper connection for these to go in the field. So they should not be taking just wire nuts and screwing them on there and dropping them and leaving them in the valve boxes. And we have problems down the road with corrosion and things like that. All of the proper connectors are being shipped with the decoder, and that's part of the pricing, as you'll see when I get into that later on. When we look at the actual boards inside the cabinet, and this is in the WS1, so the custom command, and you can see how well it fits in there. First of all, these are designed and manufactured by the Toro company. If any of the distributors that are on this have had experience with Sentinel AC systems in the past, you know that we had a Toro Sentinel timing module, and we had output boards that were manufactured by Baseline. in order to program this, this is very cumbersome because you'd have to get some baseline software. You'd have to hook up to their particular output board. You would have to go out and configure, find all the decoders in the field, do it through their software first, then come into Sentinel, and then set it up there. All of that's gone now. This is, since it's all of our boards, the setup of this is extremely simple as far as getting the decoders programmed up in the field, getting them programmed up in the controller right there. So the two boards that are in the controller, you have a master valve pump start on the power board on the left side. Then on the right side, you have your two-wire output board. Very simple, and I'm going to go into the details of each next. When we look at the power board, first thing that we have is the input power. There's a tap off the transformer that runs the Molex connector into this power board. It does not go in directly to the timing module. If you've received any recent V3 Sentinel controllers, you've noticed that the power goes in directly to the bottom of the timing module. On the Sentinel AC, it's coming into this power board first. Then there's a ribbon cable that plugs in to the top. This is how it's going to come from the factory. Plugged into the top of the power board and runs up to the bottom of the timing module that supplies power to it. So that's where the TM is getting its power to operate. There are three-way switches on the power board. So if you needed to, for any reason, disable or run the master valve manually, put it in continuous on position for whatever reason, you can use those three-way switches. And a little hard for you to see, but there's some labels on the top of each switch. The left switch is for the master valve. The right switch is for the pump start right there. There is power off this board running to the two-wire board that I had in the previous slide. So that's what feeds power to that board and then eventually out into the field. Here's your master valve pump and common terminal. And the way that this operates is if you have the switches in the auto position, whenever you turn a station on, the master valve, if it's been designated as normally closed, will be a hot terminal lead with any station. If you set that station to be normally open, then it's not going to be power on that master valve terminal until there's a problem, and then it'll send out the 24 volts to energize and shut down the normally open master valve. One difference between the master valve and the pump terminal. The pump terminal is only active when you set up the controller either through the faceplate or through the software that you have a pump start. So the pump start is not a continuous hot terminal. It only activates when you set up that pump start to work with certain programs. So this allows you some flexibility. If you have certain stations you use in booster pump and certain programs that you want the pump to come on with and other programs that you don't, gives you that flexibility. One of the best things about this board is what you see right here, those MOVs, the surge protection. When you start to look at this, since we're running power from the transformer into this power board, and from there it's going into the TM and into the two-wire board, we're actually providing surge protection before it gets to any of these components right there. So we wanted to separate it out. If you were to take a power hit and it comes in through the primary power, it protects your timing module and also protects the two-wire board right there. So it's a nice addition, nice design that the guys, the engineers have put together for us here. Let's look at the two-wire board. On the two-wire board, we've got our input power that jumps over from that power board that was just on the previous slide right there. So all it is just another Molex connector that plugs into the top of the two-wire board. We've got our serial connection from the Sentinel timing module. And if you've ever worked with any of the Sentinel controllers, two-wire controllers, you're familiar with this. What we have is we have basically a communication cable. Comes off of one of the serial ports of the Sentinel timing module and sends commands out to the field. This is going to go directly from the front serial port on a Sentinel two-wire controller to this 2-wire board right here. This is a 2-wire switch, and I don't know how well it shows up on your computer, but if you look slightly to the right of this switch, it has a label that says Sentinel, and to the bottom of that switch it says Eagle Plus. Eagle Plus is a Rainmaster product, and we are utilizing this board across both brands. For Sentinel, obviously it needs to be in the Sentinel position. If this is connected to a Sentinel timing module and that switch is in the Eagle Plus position, it will not activate anything in the field. It's not going to communicate properly. So it will come set up in the Sentinel position, but one of those things, if somebody calls you and they're out in the field and they're saying, hey, I'm not getting any communication to my decoders, one of the simplest first questions to ask, look at the switch on the 2-wire board and what position is it in. Verify it's in Sentinel position right there. The 2-wire terminal. As I mentioned earlier, there's places for 2-wire paths. Now you can splice into that cable downstream of it and go off in different directions, but you can run the 2-wire out in 2 different directions or loop it back in and connect to the second terminal position that you have right there. And then finally, the decoder programmer terminal, and I'm going to get into more detail about this, I believe it's the next slide, and talk about how the decoders are programmed. But it's a little quick connect that's on that 2-wire board. So if you needed to take a decoder and pop it in and reset the decoder address, you could do it right there on this 2-wire board. Remember, if you have any questions, make sure you're typing those in the chat box so I can answer those questions at the end of this training session. Let's take a look at the decoder programming options. As you just saw, we've got that terminal that's on the bottom of that cabinet. And I can tell you from experience that if you were going to be selling a project and you had 100 decoders, you don't want to have your contract, you're inserting 100 decoder wires or 100 times into this little terminal. We're working on an addition to go out with the clock where it'll be a little called pigtail cable that's going to plug in there with some alligator clips, where you can plug it in there and just clip on with the alligator clips and go through the faceplate. But as an option to that, there is a handheld programmer, and I can tell you I've used this, I've done it both ways. The handheld programmer is a really flexible tool. It is currently a Rainmaster product. You can order it. There's the product part number, TW-PROG. Contact Linda Rodriguez or Don Gella, Bruce Funnel, myself. I can get you the information on that. There's the DNet on the handheld programmer. You can do it either way right there. The handheld programmer obviously gives you more flexibility in the actual programming of the decoders right there. It has alligator clips on it. So let's take a look at the programming. If you're going to do this from the faceplate, this is what you're going to do. If you're out on the home screen of the controller, what you want to do is go to Options. And when you get to Options, you're going to turn the dial until you see Program Toro AC 2-wire. When you get to that particular function, you need to hit the Enter button. Once you hit the Enter button, now I should have said that you can hook your decoder wire, your red and black, up to either directly to that terminal or to a little pigtail cable with 2 alligator clips on it. And so you've got it connected to your controller already. You hit this, and then what it's going to do is it's going to read the decoder address. Once it reads the decoder address, you can change it to whatever you want it to be. Now, when you set this decoder address, essentially what you're doing is you're setting it up as a station number. Now, I'm going to show you in just a moment how you can manipulate that, so it's not necessarily if I set something to be station 5, maybe I want that to operate on station 32. Well, you can do that. So you're putting a numeric value to the decoder itself, and that numeric value is going to be between 1 and 204, representing the total number of stations that the central controller can run on that 2-wire system right there. After you set the new address, the last thing you need to do is you need to hit the enter button. Enter button saves everything. So if you've operated already in a Sentinel faceplate, you'll notice that when you make a change on the keypad, if you see a little flashing cursor appearing in that LCD, that's prompting you to save. Save means you have to hit enter on that left button. That dial acts as a save button as well. You can just push the dial in, and by pushing the dial in, that saves it as well. So it's a very simple process here of setting up decoders. Now, if I do this from the handheld programmer, and I apologize for the glare on this photograph, but I think I can get the message across here by looking at this. The 2 wires that are coming out of the bottom right are pretty much that pigtail alligator clip. You can't see the alligator clips, but they're on the end of those 2 black wires right there. One of them is labeled for the red, the other one's labeled for the black. So you attach it to your 2 communication cable wires to your decoder. You turn the programmer on. This runs on a couple of 9-volt batteries. So I can do this either in the office, I can do it out in the field, I can do it in my vehicle. It doesn't matter. What I'm going to do first is hit the read button. When I hit the read button, the address is going to pop up in that small LCD. Now, when it appears, if I want to change it to be something else, so let's say that I read it, it comes up and it says that it's decoder 001, and I want that to be 005. I'm going to use the plus sign button, the one at the top, to advance it to 005, and then I take the button right below read and I hit program. Push the program button, and then when it reprograms it, you get the light next to success that lights up and indicates it. If I want to verify it and make sure that I've set it to that particular decoder address, I can just hit the read button again. It should come back and say 005. Disconnect that decoder, make a note on it that it's now 005, set it off to the side and do the next. It literally would take about maybe a minute at most to hook it up, program it, read it, program it, mark it, put it to the side. So it's a very simple, easy process to get these decoders set up in the field. Now let's take a look a little bit, and this can be done from the faceplate of the controller or via the software. I wanted to just illustrate this in the software because it's easier to see. The controller, when you order it, is going to come set up this way, but I want you to be aware of where it shows up in the software or where it would show up in the controller. It's going to be in the options button of the decoder. Of the controller faceplate, as far as indicating what the port function is. And it should, as I said, come set up this way from the factory. If you wanted to verify this and you're in the software and you've established communication to your controller, you're going to go into that particular controller, you're going to go to special data, and then you're going to go to the advanced tab in special data. So you click on the tab and it brings it to the forefront right there. The front port, after you receive it, should say that it is set to BL/Toro AC 2-wire. If for any reason it comes back and it says default or it says any other sort of function, it is not going to communicate to that 2-wire board. So if you remember that serial cable that I showed you in that particular slide, about 3 slides previous to this one, where the serial cable is running from the bottom of the TM over to the 2-wire board, the TM needs to know that it's sending out commands over that front port. Now, if for any reason you need to change ports, say you're hooking up a 900 megahertz radio, you're putting in a modem of some sort to it, and you're using a port and you need to hook up to the front port on your communication device, and you want to reset it to the back. You can move the serial cable up to the back, but you're going to have to change this back port function to be the BL/Toro AC 2-wire. Otherwise, just leave it as it's set from the factory right here, and everything should communicate fine. Now, besides the port being set up, the Toro AC 2-wire, stations will need to be set up as Toro AC 2-wire. Again, this can be done from the faceplate of the controller. It should be set this way, and the ones that I've received, the ones that I know that we've shipped to the field, have come where all the station settings, the station types, are already set up as Toro AC2 wire. But if you want to verify it, then you can go into station settings from the faceplate. From the software, you're going to go in here, and you're going to go to zone data. After you receive zone data, the station types should all show up as Toro AC2 wire right here. Now, if you look at the settings under map unit and map station, that is the only place that station information or decoder information will be placed. Now, map unit should always be 001. There's nothing in device precode. There's nothing in map address that needs to be put in. So unlike the DC version, if anyone's ever had experience of populating these fields here from the DC has a 5 alphanumeric decoder address. 3 of those values go into device precode. The other 3, or 2 of them go into device precode. The other 3 go into map unit, and then you have to put in station information for map station and map address. You don't here. Now, what's important about this and what you see on this screen, let's say that I had a 2 or 4 station decoder. Now, when I set this up, and it does it from the handheld programmer, if I take a decoder, and let's say that it's a 4-station decoder, and I read it on that handheld programmer, and then I set it to be station 1, what it's going to do is it's automatically going to take station 2, 3, and 4 and program that to be map station 2, 3, and 4, as you see it up here. Well, let's say that I've got a site where I want station 1 and 2 to correspond to the actual station 1 and 2, but I want 3 and 4 because it's going to be irrigating shrubs or annuals or something different from 1 and 2. I want to start that on station 25. Well, then either from the faceplate or from the zone data, and it's obviously easier to do it at the zone data level because I can see the whole screen at one time, I can move where it says in the column map station, I can move 3 to station 25. I can move 4 to station 26. So I can reorder my map stations to correspond to the stations over here on the left in the red column in zone data. That's your actual station numbers as it's going to operate from the software or from the faceplate. The map station just allows me to reorganize my decoder numbers to correspond to whatever station I want. So it does give you a lot of flexibility here. It's not so important really that you have all of these decoders numbered and programmed up either from the handheld programmer or from the controller programmer into a particular sequence. You can do these however you want and reorder them in either the faceplate or from zone data right there. On the wire, when we had in using the DC version, we recommended the wire on the right side, 7350D. That's a page spec. It doesn't have to be a page wire. It can be, any manufacturer. I know a lot of y'all use Regency or Barron, and so those are certainly acceptable as long as they meet the specifications, but it does not have to be a twisted pair. You can use a twisted pair of wire if you prefer, but it could also be a parallel pair of wires you see on the left side right there. As long as it's a jacketed cable, it offers some protection and they use the right wire connections. That's what we're mostly concerned about. One thing that you'll see too, I'm going to start covering some information on support materials, and what I want you to take a good look at here is if you haven't seen it, we've got a new Sentinel design guide, which I'm going to show you some slides of here momentarily. In that design guide, we've got specification information on the wire on there. So if you have to supply that to anyone, it's all available. In the last few months, and has put together just a wonderful supply of support materials for us here. So instead of us coming out with the product and then a few months later having some support material, it's ready now. He's got cut sheets on the 2-wire controller, talking about the decoders, the controllers, the cabinets. You can see we've got some information in there about the soil moisture sensor. We have details on the controller as well, in the wall mount, the pedestal, every configuration that you would need. Those are available too. This is that Sentinel design guide that I was referring to. And if you have not had an opportunity to get this, the next slide I'm going to show you is going to be our new website that has all of our support material on it for Sentinel. And it's a specific Sentinel website. You can download this Sentinel design guide. It is a probably 40, 50-page document that covers details about setting systems up, different methods of communication from a computer out to the field, what all the devices are that you can connect to a Sentinel controller, the options of communicating to your output boards via wire or wired cable or wireless, talking about short-range wireless boards, talks about long-range wireless boards. And then one of the best things, too, that we've got here is that it has part number breakout with some graphic information so that if you need to call out a specification and you're using wireless boards and it's a 24 station and you want it in a custom command cabinet, we've got pages that indicate this both graphically and also with all the technical information associated to it right there. You should be getting these, and I know that they're available through Toro. The part number, and I should have put it on this screen, and I meant to do that this morning, but if anybody's got a pen, and I can certainly email this out, it's a form number 373-0829. I'll read that again. It's form number 373-0829.